if you remember the Lebanon crisis, so the Beirut port, mysteriously blows up, and then 2 years later, so just last year in 2022, the Israelis send an FPSO, which is this enormous vessel that can extract gas on the go, and they try stealing gas from Lebanon in this Leviathan Basin in the Karish gas field. And the only reason they backed off in the end is because Hezbollah threatened to fire on them. They said, if you steal any of our nation's resources, we will fire upon you. And then Biden sent Amos Hochstein, who's his special envoy, to mediate, and they settled this maritime border issue. But just to recap, so Gaza is under siege since 2007. You can't even fish, let alone extract gas. The Beirut port is out of action, and Syria's Latakia port, Israel bombed that too and put it out of action. So the only major port left on the Mediterranean coast, in the Levant, is Haifa, which is controlled by the Israelis. And this is great because now they can monopolize the flow of gas into Europe. You got rid of Iran, you got rid of Russia, and you got rid of the Arabs. And then what happens magically? The Israelis propose themselves as the solution to the EU's gas shortages, and they signed a deal after sanctioning Russia. They signed this, and Ursula von der Leyen went there and said explicitly, Israel is going to be the solution to our gas problem. And so, of course, the Americans, they want to sell their own gas, liquefied natural gas, LNG, but the exclusion of the global South and the theft of resources is a plan that's been in the making for a long time. I mean, the Americans, this goes back several administrations where they've said they don't want any gas, Russian gas, coming into Europe. So, these things have come into play. And we shouldn't forget also the Ben Gurion Canal. This is a canal that was, I think Pierce mentioned the Suez crisis just earlier. In 1956, after Nasser, the Egyptian president, dared to nationalize his own land, the Americans and Israelis came up with a secret plan to create a rival to the Suez Canal, and they named it Ben Gurion. And they had a plan to put 520 nuclear bombs in the Negev desert to excavate and dig the canal for them. They didn't go ahead with it, but it's a classified document. It was declassified in the 90s, and they came up with this in 63. So if you look at the map of this proposed Ben Gurion Canal, it literally passes through Gaza. So if you want to build that canal and monopolize not just the gas, but the shipping lanes, you have to take over Gaza. You can't have any resistance. You can't have anyone, quote unquote, annoying you. And the Israelis, either way, they want to kill the Palestinians and take their land. So it's like two birds with one stone. No one is going to use this proposed canal if you've got rockets flying all the time. It's just not going to work. So we shouldn't forget that this is also an important part of their plan. And they're doing all of this because they're in crisis. When we look at the New Silk Road, this will go from China all the way to Syria, and then it has access to the Mediterranean Sea. And Pierce also mentioned that Syria was brought back into the fold, into the Arab League and into the international community. And what did President Assad do just before October 7th? He went and visited China. So this, of course, makes the Americans very angry because China is the world's largest economy. And Syria and China signed a strategic partnership. The reason for this is so that the New Silk Road would have access to the Mediterranean Sea, which is pivotal, as we're talking about. And Iran and Iraq, at the same time, signed a railway deal, which expands railway access and completes this entire axis of trade, land-based and maritime. So Netanyahu went to the UN and he holds up this map, and this is just before October 7th, and he declares his plan for a new Middle East. What it really is, it's a rival to the Silk Road. So, once again, the wars that we're seeing in Ukraine and Gaza, we have to talk about the historical context. We have to talk about occupation. We have to talk about Israeli occupation and NATO expansion. They are absolutely the reasons behind these wars, but we shouldn't forget that there are these massive economic incentives and this crisis, this existential crisis in their minds of these Western leaders, that they have to compete against the global South. They have to steal the resources. They have to control the shipping lanes.